epic saga of the interstellar comet known as 3I Atlas is nearing its end, but not before it goes out without a metaphorical bang.
In our case of 3I Atlas, it looks like a fuzzy ball of light.
NASA's live feed went silent in exactly 3.7 seconds, the moment twin, perfectly symmetrical blue jets erupted from an interstellar object not meant to be understood. What followed wasn't a glitch. It was a digital erasure. Deleted links, a classified tag. The object wasn't just glowing, it was accelerating, breaking into 16 pieces, and each fragment was still active. This wasn't a comet. It was executing a sequence, and what came next left scientists speechless. An object from the very beginning. On August 6, 2025, the Automated Telescope Survey in Chile flagged something moving against the backdrop of stars. At first, it was just another entry in a long list. But when astronomers calculated its path, a wave of excitement spread through the community.
We've got a big update, a huge update on our favorite interstellar object. It could be the biggest update in the solar system.
This was no ordinary comet from the outer solar system. Its speed and its trajectory were off the charts. It was moving too fast at too strange an angle to be bound by our sun's gravity. It was a visitor. Specifically, it was only the third confirmed interstellar visitor ever seen. This was a big deal.
And we have a better idea of the orbit of this object. This might be a brand new, unknown, potentially hazardous asteroid.
The first, Oumuamua, discovered in 2017, was a total enigma, a rocky, cigar-shaped thing that showed bizarre acceleration. The second, 2E Borisov, in 2019, was comfortingly normal, a classic icy traveler.
This object has been traveling through interstellar space for hundreds of millions of years, billions of years.
So the world was watching for number 3, hoping it would answer the questions Oumuamua raised. Would it be normal or strange? 3I Atlas answered that question almost immediately. It chose strange. The first anomaly was its road into the neighborhood. It wasn't taking a gentle looping path. It was on a radical, high-speed dive straight toward the inner solar system. It aimed directly for the sun, like a bullet on a final, fiery course. This extreme trajectory made scientists sit up and take notice. It was an aggressive, almost purposeful path.
Is that it's moving along a trajectory that is very special.
Then came the first scientific observations. As the sun warmed it, the object began to release gases, forming a hazy cloud called a coma. Scientists analyzed the light from that coma, looking for chemical fingerprints. What they found was confusing.
This comet's really cool because it does have that tail from the sun's radiation blasting it, but it also has a forward-facing tail.
The basic ingredients were there, like carbon monoxide and dioxide, but the recipe was all wrong. The ratios of certain elements, particularly metals like iron and nickel, were strange. They didn't match the expected blend for a simple ball of interstellar ice. It was like finding a cake that used cement powder instead of flour. The components were familiar, but the result made no sense. At the same time, amateur astronomers around the world started reporting something with their own telescopes. The comet had a color, a persistent, vivid blue tint. Most comets glow white or faint green. This electric blue was unusual. The official explanation was quick. It must be ionized carbon monoxide, a rare but possible effect. People accepted this, but the visual oddness stuck in everyone's mind.
The sun is here, and the comet is here. The sun sends the solar wind to the comet, the tail goes behind the comet.
It was the first thing anyone would mention. Hey, have you seen that blue comet? So, the early picture was of a highly unusual but not impossible object, a weird interstellar comet with strange chemistry and a funny color. The scientific establishment settled on terms like hyperactive and exotic to describe it. It was comfortably placed in the rare natural phenomenon box. The major players, NASA, the European Space Agency, observatories worldwide, all turned their instruments toward it. It was a prime target, but a low hum of disquiet began beneath the surface.
Of the WOW signal and 3I Atlas are aligned. Chance probability of 0.6%.
When experts put all the early data together, the radical trajectory, the weird chemical signatures, the persistent blue glow, it created a profile of something that didn't quite fit. It was a collection of small whispers that, together, started to sound like a single unsettling question. In private discussions, the tone was cautious. The word anomalous was used more and more.
There are still a lot of things we don't understand about it, and it didn't look like comets that we are familiar with.
The community was waiting for the next round of data from more powerful tools to make sense of it all. They were waiting for a closer look. That closer look was coming, and it would not clarify the situation. It would completely upend it.
The job is trying to unearth. It's all there. The universe is like sort of hiding in the darkness, and we have to bring it out.
The sense of unease was a premonition. The true nature of 3I Atlas was just beginning to reveal itself. The James Webb discrepancy.
How amazing is it that we humans have a word for something that literally flies between stars, and so far...
The James Webb Space Telescope changed everything. Until it pointed its golden mirrors at 3I Atlas, the story was about a strange but possibly natural comet. Webb was the game changer. It doesn't just take pretty pictures. It sees the universe in heat signatures and chemical fingerprints, in a kind of light our eyes can't see. It's the ultimate cosmic detective.
The world's largest and most powerful space telescope has revealed unprecedented views of Jupiter.
So when it focused on the interstellar visitor in the late summer of 2025, it wasn't just looking. It was conducting a deep scan, and what it found broke the story wide open. The data presented scientists with three undeniable puzzles, each one more baffling than the last. The first shock was the sheer size of the activity. Webb and other observatories measured a cloud of carbon dioxide gas around Atlas that was mind-bogglingly huge.
The plume of gas around it is mostly carbon dioxide, 95% by mass, based on the Webb telescope data.
This cloud, called a coma, stretched an estimated 348,000 kilometers across. That's nearly the distance from the Earth to the Moon. For a small nucleus maybe a couple kilometers wide, this was like a pebble producing the fog output of an entire ocean. The scale was impossible. It was the first major crack in the simple comet theory. Where was all this gas coming from? Then came the chemistry, and it was all wrong. Webb is brilliant at this. By analyzing the infrared light, it can identify specific molecules. In a normal comet, you expect a mix, with plenty of water vapor as the primary ice melts. But Webb found 3I Atlas's coma was overwhelmingly carbon dioxide, with surprisingly little water. The ratio was off the charts, unlike almost anything seen in our own solar system.
And they get vaporized by sunlight before they have a chance to turn around and show up.
It was made of the wrong stuff, but the strangeness went deeper. Other powerful telescopes, like the Very Large Telescope in Chile, detected another anomaly. They found significant amounts of the metal nickel in the gas, but none of the iron that almost always accompanies it in nature. This nickel without iron signature is so unusual, it's something scientists associate more with industrial processes than with natural cosmic debris. The object wasn't just from another star system, it seemed to be built from a different recipe entirely, one that suggested processing, not just ancient freezing.
With the rotation axis in the direction of the sun at large distances, that's also very unusual.
The third and most crucial discovery was the heat. By reading the infrared emissions, Webb could map the temperature of the object itself. And here it found something that defied all logic. Deep inside the nucleus, far from the surface being warmed by the sun, Webb detected distinct, intense hotspots. These weren't random. They were stable and seemed to have a geometric alignment. This was the killer finding. A natural comet heats from the outside in like an ice cube under a lamp. It does not develop organized internal pockets of heat. That requires an internal source of energy. This was the first concrete, measurable evidence that something within 3I Atlas was active. It was generating its own power. The object wasn't just passively melting. Something inside was awake. Quietly, the language used by the scientists began to shift. The conversation in official channels grew more careful. Internal memos and reports from the observation teams, not meant for public eyes, started using a very specific technical term: structural anomalies. It's a cold clinical phrase. You use it to describe a crack in a wing, a flaw in a bridge's design, or a problem with a spacecraft's frame. You do not use it to describe a random piece of space ice. The very word structure implies something built. The central question was no longer, what is this comet doing? The whispered question in the halls of observatories and in secure chat rooms between researchers became far more direct and profound.
Has been on our radar only for about a few months. Since then, things have gotten very, very interesting.
What is operating inside this object? Webb's deep scan had stripped away the last comforts of a natural explanation. It revealed an object that was too active for its size, made of the wrong materials, and warmed by a hidden internal heart. The mystery was now undeniable, and with this new understanding, all eyes turned to its movement. If it wasn't natural ice, would it move according to natural laws? The next anomaly would be the most startling of all, because it moved from what the object was to what it was doing, and what it was doing was accelerating. The velocity problem. Now, with the James Webb data revealing an object with its own internal heat, scientists faced a new and more dynamic mystery. How does this thing move? Comets and asteroids follow strict rules. Their paths are dictated by gravity, a celestial dance choreographed by the sun and planets. You can predict their position decades, even centuries in advance. So, teams across the globe began to track the precise velocity of 3I Atlas as it dove toward the sun.
It does give scientists a rare chance to study something from beyond our solar system.
What they found broke the fundamental rules of the dance. As it entered the inner solar system, it was moving at around 30 kilometers per second relative to the sun, roughly 108,000 kilometers per hour. As it got closer to the sun, its speed increased to about 50 to 55 kilometers per second. In the world of comets, this is not entirely unheard of. It's called non-gravitational acceleration. Here's how it's supposed to work. As a comet heats up, ices turn to gas inside it. Pressure builds until the gas erupts through a weak spot, jetting into space like a leaky balloon. These random jets can give the comet a tiny, uneven push, changing its speed in a bumpy, unpredictable way. It's a natural process. But 3I Atlas was different. Its acceleration wasn't bumpy or random. It was smooth, consistent, as reliable as a machine. It was gaining speed like a car with its foot on the pedal, not like a wobbling balloon leaking air. This was the first major clue that the force moving it wasn't a chaotic natural process. The push was too clean. Then came the numbers that made the paradox impossible to ignore: the mass loss. To figure out the push from outgassing, you calculate how much material the object is shedding. Early measurements were strange. By late October, the numbers became absurd. Data suggested 3I Atlas was losing nearly 2 million kilograms of material every single second. To put that in perspective, that's like a mountain range vanishing into dust each hour. This created a logical trap. For an object to lose that much mass, it needs a huge surface area for the sun to heat. Think of an ice cube versus a pile of ice shavings. The shavings melt faster because there's more surface exposed. So, to lose 2 million kilos a second, 3I Atlas would need to be gigantic, roughly a sphere over 14 kilometers wide. But there was a direct measurement against this. The Hubble Space Telescope had already taken a picture. It showed the nucleus was only about 1 or 2 kilometers across. The math collapsed. Either the object was 16 times bigger than what Hubble saw, which was impossible, or the object was somehow producing an unbelievable amount of gas from a very small surface. The numbers did not add up. The object was defying physics with one hand, while reality held a photograph that disproved it with the other. Scientists were left staring at an equation that could not be solved, until one researcher decided to solve it by breaking all the rules, or rather by accepting that the rules themselves might not apply because the object wasn't natural at all. A prediction of 16. The scientific community was stuck. The equations for a single solid comet were not working. So the controversial and brilliant astrophysicist Avi Loeb and his team approached the problem from a different angle. They accepted the acceleration data as fact. They accepted the insane mass loss rate as fact. They accepted Hubble's size measurement as fact. Then they asked a simple, revolutionary question. What would have to be true for all of this to be possible?
Cometary tail around it, no dust, no gas, so the question was, what is pushing it? Maybe it's the reflection of sunlight.
Their calculation was a work of logical deduction. If the acceleration required a certain amount of gas, and that gas had to come from a certain surface area, and the nucleus itself was too small to provide that area, then the only solution was that the surface area had to increase dramatically. And the only way for a small object to suddenly have the surface area of a giant one is for it to break apart, not into dust, but into many separate, smaller pieces. Each new fragment would expose fresh interior ice to the sun, creating more gas, explaining the massive vapor output. Loeb's team ran the numbers backward. They plugged in the impossible acceleration and mass loss, and the math spit out a number. Not a range, not an estimate, a precise integer solution. The data dictated that to make the physics work, 3I Atlas needed to break into exactly 16 fragments. 16 separate pieces would provide the exact total surface area needed to explain the phenomenal gas production and the smooth, constant push. This was no longer just an observation. It was a prediction, a testable hypothesis born from impossible data. The number 16 hung in the air, chilling in its precision. Nature is messy. It deals in ranges and probabilities. When a comet breaks up, it shatters into a messy cloud of countless pieces, dust, gravel, and a few large boulders. It does not cleanly separate into a specific, predicted number of large, coherent fragments. 16 wasn't a random outcome. It was a requirement of the model. Loeb's work changed the conversation forever. It moved the mystery from what is this to what is it about to do. The paper was calm, filled with equations, but its implication was explosive. If this prediction came true, it would be the strongest evidence yet that they were not dealing with a natural object, but with a system engineered to behave in a specific way. The haunting question was now on everyone's mind. Was 16 a scientific prediction, or was it in fact a blueprint they had just decoded? All anyone could do was watch the live streams, wait for the object to reach its closest point to the sun, and see if reality would follow the script. The fragmentation event and the engineered jets. The prediction was on the table. The number was 16. All the strange data, the impossible acceleration, the insane mass loss had pointed to one logical conclusion. 3I Atlas would have to break apart to make the physics work. Scientists around the world watched and waited. Then it happened. But it didn't look like a breakup. It looked like a deployment. In early November, as the object moved away from the sun, observatories confirmed it. 3I Atlas had fragmented, and not into a messy cloud of countless pieces. It separated into coherent, distinct fragments. The number reported by multiple analysis teams? Approximately 16. It was a direct hit. The prediction from the impossible math had just come true in the real world. This wasn't a random shattering. It was a validation of the most alarming theory. Now compare this to any natural comet breakup in history. Think of a firework exploding. Debris flies out in all directions, tumbling, chaotic, unpredictable.
This comet is at the reverse side.
But is it nature or something else? We're gonna find out soon.
The pieces drift apart randomly, governed by nothing but the initial force of the blast and gravity. That's what nature produces. 3I Atlas did the opposite. The fragments didn't scatter, they arranged. Observations suggested they moved into a formation, maintaining a strange structured spacing. Even more telling, each fragment seemed to carry on the original object's strange behavior.
Observing this rare comet that had water vapor in it, they saw it in our solar system.
Each one glowed with that same electric blue. And critically, each one appeared to produce its own focused jet of material. This was the key. A dying comet doesn't equip every piece of its debris with a new working engine, but that's exactly what it looked like. The proof didn't come from a major space agency first. It came from the ground, from dedicated amateur astronomers and observatory teams who pointed their telescopes and shared their images publicly. In late 2025, astronomers like Michael Buchner and Frank Niebling captured the now iconic pictures. What they showed was staggering. There was the anti-tail, a colossal beam of dust and gas, not streaming away from the sun like a normal comet tail, but pointing directly toward it.
And in fact, it's not just rotating, it's tumbling. So it's not just it's going end over end, but twisting as it does so.
This jet was measured to be nearly 1 million kilometers long. It was incredibly narrow and focused, a defined column in space. Other images showed not just one, but multiple jets, all appearing to emanate from specific points in a geometric pattern. The language used by observers shifted from scientific to stunned. The patterns didn't look random. To many, they looked mechanical. The phrase thruster alignment began to appear in discussions. These weren't the fuzzy, indistinct photos sometimes released by large agencies. These were sharp, detailed, and undeniable. They showed a level of structure and precision that defied the explanation of simple ice turning to gas. Sunlight doesn't create straight lines and perfect angles across millions of kilometers of space. Engineering might. Now let's go back. Back to the very beginning of our story, the moment the NASA Livestream went dead. Remember the final frozen frame? The one that lasted 3.7 seconds? It showed a fragment, now known as Fragment B, with two perfectly symmetrical blue jets.
It was the very first object that we had ever discovered that had originated outside the solar system.
At the time, it was a shocking mystery. With the new context, that image wasn't a freak event. It was a sample, a close-up of the new normal. The symmetrical jets on Fragment B were not unique. They were the standard operating procedure for every one of the 16 fragments. Which means when that NASA Livestream captured Fragment B in sharp focus for 3.7 seconds, whoever was monitoring that feed saw exactly what amateur astronomers would confirm days later: proof that every fragment was operating the same way. The feed didn't cut because of confusion, it cut because someone understood. The hard geometry that caused so much panic was just a single piece of a now visible larger system. This is why the blackout feels so significant. It wasn't that NASA saw something unexplainable, it's that in that moment, they likely saw something becoming explainable. The chaotic comet theory was evaporating in real time, replaced by the terrifying clarity of a pattern. The feed wasn't cut because of a glitch. It may have been cut because that single frame confirmed the object's true systematic nature.
We cannot really pinpoint the nucleus size. It's partially due to the size of the object, but also it's partially due to the activity.
It wasn't breaking apart chaotically, it was executing a sequence. The fragmentation was not an accident, it was a phase. And the jets were not signs of death. They were signs of function. The question hanging over everything now shifted completely. It was no longer, what is this? The question became, what is it doing next? A sequence, not an accident. As 3I Atlas drifts farther from the Sun, receding into the outer darkness, the story refuses to end. The 16 fragments continue on their path, but they do not behave like debris. They do not fade or tumble.
We've got some fresh images of 3I Atlas, a third ever interstellar object observed from Earth.
They are not silent. They maintain their precise formation, a ghostly squadron holding its shape against the pull of gravity and the chaos of space. They continue to glow with that same persistent electric blue, a color that has no business being there. Tracking data confirms it. They are still accelerating in unison, a coordinated push that defies the slowing hand of solar gravity. As of late December 2025, all 16 fragments remain under observation by multiple observatories worldwide. This is not decay, this is operation. We are not watching the aftermath of an explosion. We are witnessing a fleet execute its next maneuver. So we are left at a crossroads with all the evidence laid bare. Two doors stand before us leading to vastly different universes. The first door is the naturalist's final, desperate stand. It asks for one more leap of faith. It suggests that every single anomaly, the hidden heat source, the impossibly smooth acceleration, the clean break into exactly 16 pieces, the geometric jets that look like thruster ports, is a fluke. A once-in-the-universe cascade of exotic physics. Perhaps some unknown type of super ice, a quantum tunneling effect never before seen, a perfect storm of chemical reactions that just happens to look like engineering. This door remains open by a thread. It is a possibility, but it grows weaker with each new fact. It requires us to believe in a series of miracles so specific that they collectively defy probability. It asks us to dismiss the overwhelming pattern of coordination and accept astronomical coincidence. The second door is the artifact hypothesis. This is not a shout about little green beings. It is a quiet, logical conclusion drawn from a mountain of data. It states simply that the most consistent explanation for everything witnessed is a designed mechanism. Think of it like this. If you find a gear in the forest, you might dream up a wild, natural process that formed it. But when you find 16 interlocking gears arranged in a perfect circle, the simplest explanation is that someone made them. This hypothesis is the key that fits every lock. The internal heat, an onboard power source now active. The constant acceleration, a controlled propulsion system. The number 16, a planned fragmentation sequence. The symmetrical jets, directional exhaust. One theory is a tangled knot of desperate excuses. The other is a single, elegant idea that makes sense of it all. This understanding reframes everything, especially the blackout. The termination of the NASA Livestream now appears in a devastating new light. They likely did not cut the feed because they saw something confusing. They cut it because in that final crystal-clear frame, the confusion evaporated. The mystery was solving itself before their eyes. The image of Fragment B's perfect jets was not an anomaly. It was a confirmation. It was the moment the comet mask fell away, revealing the system beneath. The panic wasn't about the unknown. It was about the suddenly terrifyingly known. We were not spectators to a death. We were accidental witnesses to an awakening. A long-prepared sequence, engineered in another star system perhaps billions of years ago, reached its final trigger point, a close pass by our sun. Every bizarre action was a pre-programmed step in a silent ballet. The approach, the heating, the fragmentation, the deployment, all were part of a single executed command. Now the fragments slip away, a silent formation etched against the void. Their immediate purpose is a mystery. Their ultimate origin is a question for the ages, but their artificial nature is now the central, inescapable truth we must confront. The most profound question is no longer what was it. That answer is now clear. The haunting question that follows us into the dark is, if this was all a sequence, what was it the beginning of? The search for that answer has only just begun, and it changes our place in the universe forever. The blackout moment. The image on the screen snapped into a clarity that was never supposed to be possible. For weeks, the live stream had shown a fuzzy, glowing dot. But in that instant, the cameras locked onto something else. Two brilliant blue jets erupted from the object.
The purpose of ASTM is to photograph and study some of these lightning phenomena that we call blue jets and red sprites.
They weren't chaotic. They weren't random. They were perfect mirror images of each other, sharp and defined, forming a stark geometric shape against the dark of space. It didn't look like a natural event. It looked engineered. This impossible frame lasted for exactly 3.7 seconds. Then the feed died. It didn't flicker or fade. It was severed. One moment, this shocking clarity. The next, absolute black. A plain official message replaced it. Signal acquisition interrupted. Please stand by. But everyone watching knew that was not a technical message. That was a curtain being slammed shut. The digital crime scene took shape in minutes. The link to the live stream on NASA's website reportedly vanished. In the internal systems that track objects in space, the status of 3I Atlas was changed.
We've got some fresh images of 3I Atlas, a third ever interstellar object observed from Earth.
It was moved from a public catalog into a restricted category, a tag used for secret military satellites, not for visiting comets from another star. Meanwhile, the evidence was already loose. Those 3.7 seconds were enough. Screenshots flooded the internet. Astronomy forums and Discord servers exploded. The conversation shifted from scientific curiosity to stunned disbelief. People weren't discussing comet tails. They were pointing at the geometry. They were highlighting the impossible symmetry of the blue jets.
The jets associated with 3I Atlas display persistent geometry and symmetry.
The image was clean, too clean. It showed structure where there should only be chaos. One screenshot became the focal point, the smoking gun. In it, the object's core was visible, and from two specific points, those blue jets shot out. They were columnated, tight focused beams, not dispersing clouds. Their angles were precise. Their thickness was identical. It was a configuration that screamed of function, of design. It looked, to put it simply, mechanical. This single image forced a terrifying question into the open. Why did the blackout happen then? The feed had run for weeks without issue. It survived solar glitches and communication delays, but it was terminated the very millisecond this specific structured image came into focus. Not before, not after. The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. It felt deliberate. It felt like a reaction. So the real mystery was no longer about the comet itself. The mystery was about the reaction to it. That blackout was a message in itself, Someone with the authority to kill a major NASA broadcast had seen what everyone saw, and their immediate decision was to hide it. What did they know that the public didn't? What about that particular arrangement of light and shadow was so dangerous, so revelatory, that the only option was total silence? The official story would be a glitch, a lost signal. But the evidence, the deleted links, the restricted status, the pristine, haunting screenshot told a different story. This was the starting gun. The cover-up had begun, and the hunt for the truth was now wide open.